Hello, everybody in YouTube land.
Good morning. Good
Um,
morning.
I think Zoom just updated its settings. So anyway, figured that one out. Welcome to Goddess Matters here on YouTube, relating timeless themes to contemporary women's lived experiences. I'm here, as usual, with my co-hostess with the mostest, Dr. Andrea Slaminsky. Hello, Dr. A.
Good morning. Good morning. Hello, Dr. A.
And today we have two fantastic guests. Dr. Annie Finch is here with us again. She was here a few weeks ago. She's the editor of Choice Words, writer on abortion, is a poet, philosopher, and performance artist. And we have a new esteemed guest, Dr. Auntie Samantha Zipporah. Dr. or excuse
Witch
me,
doctor. Yeah.
Witch doctor? Sorry, I'm so yeah,
No
that's
worries.
right. Yeah, but very well expertised.
Mhm.
Samantha Zipporah is an author, educator, and healing artist with over 25 years of experience devoted to sexual and reproductive liberation. And so we've invited on Annie's request that we have a conversation about the sacred dimensions of abortion today. So we're really excited to learn. I think there's so much. Well, we all know there's a lot of misinformation. It's a very heated topic, especially in U.S. culture. And so I'm really excited to have both of you here to share your experiences and your work, really, especially you, Samantha, your work with women. So, Dr. A, do you want to get us started, or should I start off the conversation?
Sure. I think, just kind of bouncing off of what you said of how angry a lot of people get in American culture and twisted up about this subject. I think really it comes back to a fundamental question, which I think we were all surprised and disappointed at the overturning of Roe v. Wade and what that brings up in terms of women's bodily sovereignty, right? Women's bodily sovereignty, women's agency in all aspects of their lives. And so I'd really maybe like to turn it over to Sam and say, what kind of got you started in the work that you do, and how do you see what's going on in the zeitgeist as being influential in your work?
Thank you. Um, so I started very young. I started around 8 years old studying Rosemary Gladstar and Christiane Northrup's work in response to my mother's hysterectomy, which created a full-on existential crisis and spiritual awakening in me. And my work has been very spirit-led. I didn't have human or social guidance or teachers, but I had authors and was a ravenous student from a very young age. And I grew up in Boise, Idaho, and I started volunteering at Planned Parenthood in junior high school. I was the girl with a locker full of condoms and STI pamphlets. And I supported my first friend with an abortion when I was 14 and she was 16. And that was where I started learning the very specific nitty-gritty aspects of anatomy and physiology, the difference between endometrium and myometrium, and how would the procedure she was having affect her fertility and her health moving forward. And that friend was a self-identified sex positive slut and witch. So her ethics and her attitude about the process, she actually also taught me tarot.
Wow.
It was highly influential on my whole framework around abortion in general.
Mm.
Um, and I will just say, before I lose the thread of the specificity of your question, that the overturn of Roe was not a surprise to me. It's something that I've been preparing for most of my young adult life and was very aware was a strong possibility because I was in meetings in Idaho on the Planned Parenthood board and I understood trigger laws and I understood the fallacy that Roe was actually protection for our autonomy. And also, I am a student midwife, lifelong student. My practice most closely aligns with traditional midwifery and folk herbalism. And so I understood that home birth was illegal in most of the country until the 80s. And if we can't give birth at full term with whom we choose and where we choose, how could we possibly expect that the government was going to condone us to end pregnancies where we choose and with whom we choose? So I feel like I might have lost some of the threads of your question, but that's just a little bit of my framework. I'm turning 40 this week, and I've been studying since I was 8. Uh, I started supporting abortion and contraception as a teenager in Idaho, and I started attending births at 19. So the full continuum, I call it the womb continuum, is my domain of expertise, not simply childbirth, not simply abortion or menstruation. It's the full continuum.
I
Yeah.
have a question. I've really been sitting with this idea of bodily autonomy and sovereignty for quite some time. Even this morning, I was like, where is that line? Like, because we don't necessarily give that to children and animals, like we decide, make decisions for them. And where is that line? What does bodily autonomy and sovereignty mean in the context of your work with, or abortion, just period?
Mhm.
Yeah, please, Sam.
Yeah, I feel like my work is constantly just being a mirror. And it's a lifelong practice, and it's very challenging, and has so many different spiritual, intellectual, emotional, social implications to constantly be holding my power back and holding up a mirror to the individual who I am supporting and reinforcing the fact that they are sovereign, they are powerful, their understanding of their body, their understanding of their path, their values, their unique circumstance needs to be the guiding light. And so there are various practices that I use to support people in that, different tools, different exercises. But that was part of why I actually never chose to get credentialed, was because of the legal implications of how hierarchy and authority and responsibility work, and that I am never here to take power from someone. I am only here to reflect their power back to them. And the word autonomy has the same Greek root meaning, autonomia, yeah, of authorship, right? So it's being the author of your life. It's writing the story of your life.
Auntie Sami, is there a spiritual aspect to this for you? Is there a connection to the goddesses? I always
Of
pluralize goddesses.
course. Yes. And in my, many of the folks that I work with, there is a strong spiritual implication and ritual is often involved. However, my priority is creating a foundational understanding of physical reality. And upon that foundation, a space of inquiry, right? So, because we are so lacking in our culture in understanding of physical reality, especially when it comes to, I'll share just a moment because I know we have so much ground to cover. But yeah, the first abortion that I supported was because I dreamt of being pregnant with an owl. So I dreamt that I was pregnant with an owl, and the talons and the claws and the beak were going to eviscerate me. If I gave birth to it vaginally, it would tear me up. And if I had a cesarean, it would also be cutting into me. And I was horrified by this dream. And I went to school the next day, and my girlfriend, who was a witch, was like, "Oh, honey, you're between the veils. Where are you? What is going on with you?" And I told her the details of my dream, and she shared with me that that was exactly how she felt about the abortion she was having on Friday, and she hadn't told a single soul. She hadn't told anybody in her family. She hadn't told her lovers, and that I was feeling. So, yeah, there's profound. We're destroyers and creators, and there's no creation and fecundity without death and decay.
So what you've just said to me
Yeah.
touches firmly on three essential aspects of goddessness,
Mm.
which is that it's based in the physical world, the immanence
Right.
and sacredness of the spiritual world. So completely, of course, comes out of the reality of the physical self,
Mhm.
and that it is between the worlds, that abortion is, that
Mhm.
the goddesses encompass death and life equally sacred.
Yes.
And then that abortion itself is this realm between the worlds where you have to straddle them in this third way, which
Yes.
is something that we carry and share together. So that you had this dream when she was in that state, like, to me that's another aspect of goddessness which isn't talked about so often, but as well as the immanent spirituality and the death and the life, there's this other quality of sharing it together that arises among us and
Mm.
within the community that we share between us, the way the owl flies between us. It's just
Oh,
so really
yeah.
beautiful what
Yeah, I
you
have a
just
very
said.
strong affinity with Lilith personally. And I
Yeah.
love reminding my European descent Nordic folks about Hel,
Yeah.
Mm,
Yes.
the
Oh,
goddess
the goddess of
Hel.
the underworld and the midwife, right?
Oh,
Of
yeah.
birth and death. And also for Freya, I understand the proto Freya, but before she got bifurcated into Frigg and Freya, the
Mhm.
slut and the housewife, she was Freya, who is, the
Mm.
midwife and the death carrier who takes the souls of the warriors into heaven to feast forever. And
Yeah.
she's also the midwife of the babies.
Yeah, I'll say I've been, for many years of activism, and I was involved with Planned Parenthood for about a decade before I parted ways. And I've been in a lot of rooms with a lot of political conversations around reproductive justice, and that my spiritual viewpoint was very degraded and rejected by a lot of the political conversations that I was part of, and that I'm like, no, this is not a conversation between a woman and her doctor, which is what Roe protected.
Her
This
veil.
is the conversation between a woman and the divine and her negotiation and her contract with embodiment.
mm,
Exactly.
Yeah.
This might be a good place for my spell, which is a
Yeah. Mhm.
conversation between the mother and the baby, and it's
Mhm.
specifically in this area of death and life. And I chose to call it an Abortion Day spell for the voices of mother and baby. And I know a lot of the people who are pro-choice don't like to use the word baby because they consider it's a potential baby, it's a fetus. But for me, following on the poet Lucille Clifton, who, and I just want to say I am here partly in my capacity as editor of this book, Choice Words, Writers on Abortion, which was the first collection of literature about abortion. And it was astonishing to put it together because when I had an abortion, I had a PhD in literature. I was looking for great literature about abortion, and I couldn't find anything except for a couple of pioneering poems, interestingly, by African American poets, Lucille Clifton's Lost Baby poem and
Mhm.
Gwendolyn Brooks' The Abortion, which were but otherwise nothing. I mean, and then I discovered as I was putting it together, so much of it was unpublished. I had writers contacting me saying, I wrote this thing about abortion, I've never had the nerve to publish it. Or it was published and just not talked about, like hidden in other things. So many great poets in here, over 600 years and 5 centuries. Great
wow.
writers, great poets. I mean, everybody's in here, like Margaret Atwood to Mary Wollstonecraft and Audre Lorde and um, Dorothy Parker and Gloria Steinem, Gwendolyn Brooks, Joyce Carol Oates, Ntozake Shange, Sharon Olds, etc., etc., Lindy Wist, Margaret Atwood. But anyway, and so this poem is in here as well. So I'll read it off my computer, but it's in this book. But one thing I discovered editing the book was how few people are writing in a spiritual way about abortion.
Mm,
Most of it was emotional. It was about the trauma of the experience and getting through the
Mm.
trauma.
Mm.
And I divided into 5 sections for the spirit, the heart, the will, the body, and the mind. And
Mm.
almost everything was was body or heart. some mind, very little from the spirit and very little from the will, which I think are the two areas we really need to talk about. So this poem of mine tries to do that. It tries to bring in the will and the spirit. And Lucille Clifton, in her Lost Baby poem, called it a baby. And I thought that was important because it's a way of claiming the power. I don't want to fudge over the fact that we have power over life and death as
Yeah.
people who can procreate, right? And so, and even the word reproduction, I understand recently, I just learned that word comes from capitalism. It comes from slavery, where they tried to like make the slaves produce other slaves. I don't like that word, procreation.
Mhm.
And you know, as ones who can procreate, it is our realm, life and death, and this is our power, and we have the capacity to do this. With there's nothing to hide, nothing to be ashamed of. And the patriarchy thinks doesn't want to trust us. I'm sure they think we can be trusted, but they don't want to trust us with this power. But I think we have to claim it. So that's why I called it a baby. Okay. An abortion day spell for two voices. One stanza for the mother, one for the baby, and one for both together. And the mother speaks in regular letters and the baby speaks in italics. So you'll hear the first stanza is the mother talking, then the baby talks, and then they share the italics and their voices come together. And I turn your blood back to the earth. I am life, you are death, and we kiss through the fire that is my freedom's birth. By the womb of our love's endlessness, as you turn my blood back to the earth. I am death, you are life, and we kiss till we move through the deep, giving forth to the web of her love-woven bliss, through the fire that is our freedom's birth. And I turn your blood back to the earth. I am life, you are death, and we kiss through the fire that is my freedom's birth. By the womb of our love's endlessness, as you turn my blood back to the earth, I am death, you are life, and we kiss till we move through the deep, giving forth through the web of our love-woven bliss, by the fire that is our freedom's birth. And I turn your love back to the earth. I am life, you are death, and we kiss through the fire that is our freedom's birth. By the womb of our love's endlessness, as you turn my blood back to the earth, I am death, you are life, and we kiss till we move through the deep, giving forth through the web of her love-woven bliss, in the fire that is our freedom's birth.
Thank you, Annie. Yeah, for me, I actually listened to the recording you sent of you reading that right before we got on today, and I was just kind of in this almost like trance-like state, and I was feeling into my menstrual experience, and it's like, oh, feeling into how, yes, every time that potential, that creative potential is now leaving my body, and I'm returning that blood. It is the death that I'm giving back to the earth symbolically to repurpose, to recompost, and that I can begin again. I start the renewal cycle. And maybe in the olden days, I would be literally giving the blood back to the earth, but that's not how it happens in my daily reality today. So I just was really moved by the way that it touched my menstrual experience. I've never been pregnant. I've never had to face the choice of abortion or giving birth. So even in that chasm for me, I was able to step into that experience through my menstrual body.
I'm so glad to hear that. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. At first, I was nervous to do that poem. It took a long time to put it to take that voice because I was thinking, is it incredibly I don't know, almost colonialist or wrong, just completely wrong to give the baby a voice and have the baby actually accept this experience. But when I think about the abortion that I had and so many of the friends that I've talked to about it, um, it does feel, you know, that the soul of the baby comes back. It comes back in other forms,
Mm.
and it's just and it's in the wider love of the goddess. I mean, that's the her in the last stanza, which to me is so important, to have the goddess to hold the sacredness of this process. It just doesn't work in any kind of binary spiritual path, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's so beautiful, and the love I have for the I have three pregnancies, and two of them are my children, and one of them was this one that I had the abortion. But I just feel such connection and love with this other one, this baby
Mm.
as well. You know, she's part of my life also, or they are part of my life also.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
I think.
also want to say something else, which is that after I had the abortion, um, I felt miserable. I
Mhm.
was beside myself with misery. I would wake up in the morning feeling bitter and angry at my husband because he didn't have to go through it. I
Mm.
was angry at everybody who hadn't gone through it. I felt so alone. I was just miserably and depressed. And I think that I think there are quite a few women who have these experiences, or people who've had abortions who have these experiences. Um, and I think that this can be fuel for people who are, you know, anti-choice and want to force women to have babies, force us to have babies because they think, oh, well, it's bad for you. No, what happened to me was finally, after like a year, I was also going through my Green Witch training with Susan Weed, who uh, is the one who gave me this wonderful book here, Self Ritual. Do you know this? You
I've
probably know
got
this.
that.
I
Yeah, of
just saw it. Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
course.
Um, and I was writing, I had written this book, also this poem about abortion. It's an epic poem, and
Mhm.
I wrote it before I had my own abortion, but I knew that abortion was the most epic topic. But then when I had to do it myself, as I was saying, I was so miserable for months, maybe like 8 or 9 months. And this is the kind of thing that makes people think abortion's not a good thing. But what happened was, after doing this with Susan Weed and getting my power back over ritual, I
Mhm.
basically claimed my power as a witch, which to me, the definition of a witch is someone who has their own spiritual agency,
Mm.
who is, you know, who knows how to be in touch with the goddesses within themselves, the goddessness within, and to work with that. And so at that point, finally, I was able to do ritual on my own behalf. And I woke up one morning and I just thought, oh my gosh, I need a ritual for this. Like,
Mm.
I had had this beautiful abortion experience with this wonderful Quaker doctor, and the clinic that I went to was just great. And they even gave me like a little pebble to bring home and bury in the yard. And they were aware of the ritual aspect of it and the
Wow.
sacred aspect, but it wasn't enough. And I realized that my family had been directly benefiting from the abortion. Like, one reason we chose it was because we already had two children,
Mhm.
and it just wasn't going to be good for anybody to have another. But, you know, the family had benefited from it, but I was the only one who'd had to experience this. And so I realized that for a real abortion that would work, I needed to involve them as well. So
Mm.
I just woke up this morning. I was like, I really need a ritual. And my husband was incredibly helpful and wonderful. And he was like, hey, why don't you could use these? I know you like these little seeds. You could use those. And so we made up this ritual, and then the children came, and it was so beautiful. We went in the woods. We had this incredibly lovely ceremony. This deer came and stood right at the edge of our circle and kind of joined us, and we sang to the baby, and it was really beautiful. And it's online, the whole ritual that I used in case anyone ever needs it. It's on my website. But after that, I woke up the next morning, light as a bird, light as a feather, no problem. Just, I've never felt a minute of trouble about it since. And that was
Wow.
30 years ago. I mean, it worked. And that's why I'm so big on sharing this idea of an abortion ritual, because you can't fake a ritual. Thinking about it and reading about it is not the same as doing it. You actually need to go through it, and then you realize what all the fuss is about. Like, it works. It's magic. So
And you
to
don't
me,
have to go through it alone either. Like that, I've
no,
always thought of abortion as a solitary event. And
Mhm.
yeah,
obviously that's where your work comes in,
exactly.
Auntie Sam, right,
Yes.
Sammy, right? Because is it you, Auntie Sam or Sam, Sammy? What
Thank
am
you,
I?
Sammy.
Auntie Sammy. Okay. I'm like, oh my God. I'm
You can
screwed
also
for a
just
name.
call me Sam, it's
Okay.
fine.
Sam.
Yeah, I just want to, so I use this term pregnancy release in my work to describe any type of pregnancy experience. And that is an umbrella term that includes abortion and miscarriage and childbirth. And all pregnancies are rites of passage, and alchemy and initiation and rites of passage belong within community. And that's my most recent client. It was really profound. They reached out to me and they're like, I feel more alone than I've ever felt in my entire life. And there were a healing arts practitioner as well. And I was like, well, who do you know in your physical community? Because of course I can give you support from afar, but who do you physically know who knows how to support pregnancy release? And she was like, oh, I have 6 women who are competent and care providers in various holistic modalities. And she reached out to them and had a committed circle for her release. And I feel like there's a lack of um, connection and bridge building in the fertility world and in the pregnancy care world where we forget we see abortion as this like vacuum into the underworld that is a completely different thing, but there's actually more in common than disparate with any type of a pregnancy or pregnancy release.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love that concept because
Mhm.
Annalisa and I talked a lot about women's cycles and everything having to do with shame, right? From
Uh-huh.
cultural shame. And it really seems that
Mhm.
um, you know, on the extreme side of shame is miscarriage and then is terminating a pregnancy, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Mhm.
And so and then as we come back more towards center, right, we have the other issues that women have in terms of, you know, whatever they have, different reproductive issues,
Mhm.
menstrual issues,
Mhm.
different,
Menopause. God, we're together.
sorry.
Menopause.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. There you go. There's
We've
that's a
talked
big
about
one
Can't
this.
for
even
me.
participate in capitalist productive.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it just seems that um it's so deeply I don't know, it's almost the experience has been so chained to shame, right? In at least in,
Mhm.
I would say, the global
Contemporary culture.
north. Can we say that? At least in the global north, right? And
Sure.
the
Mhm.
idea of unshaming everything around the womb journey,
Yeah.
including, and the idea of, as a creatrix, being tapped in to the powers of life and death, and
Mhm.
being able to decide, um, whether or not one is going to be able to serve this new life in this particular situation or not.
I would love to trouble this idea, the cultural amnesia. I want to just highlight the cultural amnesia we have on this topic and be specific politically and spiritually around how the Industrial Revolution and it and capitalism and the need for more workers is actually the first time that the Pope said anything official
Mm,
about abortion being a problem. And
mm,
so there are some little tidbits here and there from the Middle Ages, but there's no official statement from the Catholic Church that abortion is prohibited until the Industrial Revolution. And this idea that Annie brought up of reproduction and production and our wombs in service to the military, in service to the industrial complex, is very central. And it's not a coincidence that Roe was overturned in the middle of COVID.
Mm.
Whoa.
But
How do you make that connection?
historically speaking, an abortion wasn't even written about or discussed as an abortion until after the quickening, which is in the second trimester, after 12 weeks or later, when you can feel a child kicking. And
Mhm.
anything done to bring on your natural courses or your menstrual cycle before then is written about in the vast majority of historical texts simply as bringing on your period.
Mhm.
Bringing down the flowers,
Bringing
right?
down the
Love that
flowers and
phrase.
just, I think, yes, it's the goddess, and that nature is the goddess and the body of the goddess. And I'm most aligned with animism in my worldview and spirituality, and just this reality that the human psyche is part of nature, and nature does abortions every day. Every single species on the planet, every single species on the planet will go through a process where they will begin to reproduce and be like, oh, this is not the right environment for me to reproduce in. So I'm going to stop this process and release it into the fertility of my environment that is awareness of the ecosystem, and that women's psyches, their emotional and spiritual lives, as well as their physical substance, are the deciders for when and how to bring more life into the world, and that our psychic and spiritual and emotional safety and substance are just as important as our physical.
Yeah, totally. What were you saying about COVID? What was that connection?
Oh, the way that workforce changed during COVID and the overturn of Roe and the lack of
What did you mean?
bodies available to work, and the United States government, there's actually documents around the national production of babies. I forget the exact language, but it's like the GDP of children. Like, we're not making enough children.
Ew, to do the work for
There's a lot of rhetoric from the right now.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's a right
it's
now.
not
Oh,
hard to
yes,
find.
yes, that women should not vote and should go back to the kitchen and should be
Have more
having
babies
having
than we're
babies,
ready
babies, babies, babies,
when
right?
we're younger.
I
Mhm.
remember reading somewhere that during the end of the Roman Empire, when they were also having like a fertility crisis, they were offering to give Roman women citizenship if they had like three or more than three babies. So
Sure.
there's all of these things, and it's toward the end of the empire, right? So I think that we can
Mhm.
extrapolate here and do some parallelism and see, like, okay, so there's an ending happening in the culture, which is driving down what, for all of the reasons, women's reasons for having babies or not having children.
Mhm.
Um, that's creating a crisis at the political echelons that are like trying to force women or cajole women to have more babies because the empire is dying.
Mhm.
I think there's something going on there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Prussian Empire, women had to report their menstrual cycles to the authorities, and you were penalized for menstruating too much because you were not creating children for the military.
Mm.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
But these are the spiritual, I mean, so when you first contacted me, I was on my ancestral pilgrimage, which I titled the Blood and Power Tour. And I was doing a lot of research and writing around the intersection of religious and reproductive freedom under fascism,
Wow.
and the ways in which government and empire prevent us from accessing our divine power and our spiritual power, which can be accessed through ritual, through the sacred, and through our bodies and our ability to generate life, whether it be through ovulation or menstruation or connection with the lunar cycle, or however it is that we move that generative force, but that the need to interrupt that and create hierarchy and moderation, moderators, right? Intermediaries, between our direct access to that, or our access to that within community outside of political influence, is a really old conversation, which is, I mean, it's very particular to me as a Jew, as a Jewitch,
Mhm.
and also the history of blood libel, which is
Yeah,
profound and a lot of what I was digging in the muck of while I was in Europe. It was
yeah.
horrifying, to be honest.
I
Uh,
find Judaism is so interesting because, of course, it was the beginning of the Abrahamic religions, right? And my understanding is that Abraham's wife Sarah was a priestess of the matriarchal religions, and so I keep finding these interesting little things like, I don't know if you know Sarah Chandler. She's a
no,
wonderful
you write
Jewitch here
down.
in
Yeah.
Brooklyn, right? And she's a student of Jill Hammer, who has
Yes, I
done
know
this great
her.
scholarship. Yeah. So Sarah took me to this ritual place, and they had this bowl. It had something to do with birth, like the bowl had to be turned upside down. But
Mhm.
we were speculating that originally in the pre-patriarchal version of Judaism that the bowl had been turned upward to maybe it had a menstrual connection. I'm sorry, I'm very vague with the
Well,
memory
it's
here.
okay.
I'll try to remember my notes, but there's something about a bowl that, I mean, there's all
There
kinds
was
of
a
things.
lot of Lilith also, right, which are owls. You know, they
Oh,
Lilith was like the handmaiden, the Lilith was the handmaiden to Inanna.
oh,
In some of the pre-Judaic stories. I would, if y'all haven't spent time with Demetra George, Mysteries of the Dark Moon is like love
oh, thank you.
um,
Thank you so
for
much.
Lilith origin stories. And so there was a lot of images of Lilith actually in the bowls that would be buried underneath homes, um, because
Oh,
Lilith was supposed to be responsible for the all death of babies as well as all nocturnal emissions.
Mm.
Lilith seems to have a lot to do with this crux. I'm in this, I've started this theater here in New York called Poetry Witchuals, and we just did our first one, which was Medusa and the Snake. It was fantastic. And our next one is going to be around Halloween time, and it's going to be, a Samhain ritual for, um, it's going to bring in witches and abortion, and it's going to be called The Witch and Her Vulva. But to me, Lilith has that kind of connection of bringing together the things that maybe patriarchy is most afraid to bring together, which is sexuality and power. The
That,
power
yeah.
of the older woman and the sexual, or older, I don't know, but the true power of women and true sexuality, like bringing those together is just frightening. It's
Well,
so interesting.
that's the center of abortion for me. I have I'll send y'all, maybe you can include it in the show notes.
Definitely.
A song that's the womb sovereignty song that I wrote a good 10 years ago. And the lyrics, the refrain is many fear my power is divine. The church and state can't regulate what lies between my thighs. But there's another line that's like, I decide the fate of human life with my desire.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Mm.
And
Oh, I
that is,
can't wait to hear you sing that.
I'll send it to you. But that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about women's ability to lead a desire-led
Yes, right.
life
Exactly so.
and
Yeah.
to actually value her experience and her inner knowing and her divine power
Which is
as
the
a goddess,
opposite.
as the goddess,
Yeah.
as not separate from it, which is again back to my animist, which is inclusive of goddess culture. But it's the idea that actually our psyches are part of nature. They're not separate from them. And I think there's a serious problem with human supremacy in
Mm.
Western and Northern European culture that puts us above nature rather than participating in it, right?
Mhm.
And that our desire to have an abortion is part of nature.
Mm.
It is
Mm.
natural.
Yeah. I want to
Mm.
just touch a little bit on something you just said, just kind of triggered an idea or a thought. I don't even know if it's a question, but just looking at and with the women that I work with in perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause,
Yeah.
the idea, and this goes back to the fear of female sexual power,
Yeah.
is the idea that that the divine power, or the power of women's sexuality being something that causes cultural fear or male fear or patriarchal fear,
Yeah.
but that the disconnection seems to be somehow in the cultural zeitgeist that female desire, female sexual power, female orgasm is only okay when it leads to life,
Yeah.
when it leads to children, when it leads to reproduction, right? And
Mhm.
instead of it being a an imminent
Mhm.
power
Mhm.
that that connects into the whole cycle of the natural world
Mhm.
and the female psyche in the natural world, and
Mhm.
that it can lead to procreation, but
Yeah.
that is not its prime directive. Let's put it-
1000%.
yeah.
And
I
that's
think of it as spiritual, as a spiritual power, as the origin of religion. I think that orgasm, the female orgasm, is, but it's all these interconnected aspects of patriarchy, right? The capitalism and the violence and the control and the autocracy and the alienation from nature. It's all connected. Sorry, Sam. Yeah.
Oh, don't apologize. I want to just share this very simple concept that arose when I was doing an abortion counseling session, maybe 15 years ago, and has become real central to my teaching and my counseling work, which is this idea of the sacred yes, which is what you were speaking to, in the way that our psyche can focus on the negative and what we're rejecting, especially in the case of abortion. I also use this for contraception because I teach fertility awareness as contraception as well. So whether it is contraception or abortion, when we are saying no to a pregnancy, we're always saying yes to conception and gestation and birth of something else.
Mhm.
And so really defining that, right? Our ability to say no is sacred and powerful and needs to be uplifted and celebrated. But to actually focus our psychic and spiritual and generative energy and to root our actions, right? The simplest action, whatever it is, the physical choice that is being enacted to avoid a pregnancy or end a pregnancy, to imbue that physical action with the sacred yes of what it is that we truly desire.
Would you describe your ideal abortion, like the ideal abortion in your ideal world? What would be available to women? What do people need in
Oh,
this
the
abortion?
ideal abortion. I feel like I'm hesitant to do that in the way that I really don't like to pedestalize my concepts of abortion because I think that it's different for each person. Like, I guess
I don't mean in that
if I
sense.
were to have an abortion, what would my ideal abortion be
Yeah,
for me,
okay. Yeah,
perhaps,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess, at this point?
Or
And
as
it's
in
really hard to
what
say, like, what part of my life I'm in and what are my obligations and my resources and capacities at that time. Like,
but what would you like to be available is what I'm trying to say. Like
I
one
mean,
of the things I
choice.
learned in this book is that
Yeah.
the women's abortion experience is so awful routinely.
Ugh.
And it got me thinking about, what if we could design what we really want to be
Well, not all
available
of
for
them
people having
are.
abortion.
And
Not that
that's
they're all
one
the
of,
same, but what would be available that isn't now, I guess.
yeah. I mean, education and support are to actually make autonomous choices that are based in the sacred yes, right? Choices that are rooted in love rather than rooted in fear, and community that recognizes it as a rite of passage. Really held postpartum periods with proper nourishment and, ritual around it. I really do think that the unique capacity and context of each individual defines what type of process is ideal for them, and the physical process then informs what kind of care and process we need afterwards.
But almost everything you just said is not available to most people having an abortion. So
Absolutely
it's pretty
not.
incredible to hear you just roll it out because you know what would be optimal to have available.
Companionship, witnessing. I mean, so I have the pillars of caring for a bleeding body. Whether you're menstruating or you're releasing a pregnancy, the pillars of caring for a bleeding body, warmth, nourishment, community, and rest. And that community involves your human community as well as the animate all and connection with nature beyond the human community. But those are the basic things that we all need when the portal is open, when we're bleeding, no matter what.
Right. That's, yeah, it's something that is integral to our daily lived experience rather than something that I have a question yeah, it is a question from the audience here because we have a live chat.
Oh, sweet.
But right before I get into that, I want to say something that even in this sacred yes, let's say I said yes to pregnancy and following through with that, and okay, you're still saying no to other things, right? You're
Always.
still saying no to being a single woman, to being a mother, to being no, a woman without child. There's so many things that you're saying no to. So I think that that the yes and no are also two faces of the same
Yes.
event.
Yeah.
So Zeph says he's our most ardent fan here, and such a beautiful soul. He's asking Sam, do you suppose that the moniker of baby killer that was attached to Lilith originated in an ancient struggle between pro and anti-abortion? And he says, I'm writing a book about Lilith.
Oh, beautiful. I love that you're writing a book about Lilith. I think it could be related, but I think it's more about sexuality and contraception. There's also some interesting conversations that I've been privy to around the fruit of knowledge being connected to our evolution from the estrus cycle. Right? So like the Garden of Eden story, that one of the central themes is this idea that we were like part of the animal kingdom and nature, and then we became separate from it when we ate of the fruit. And that our estrus cycle and the way that our psyches are able to actually perceive our fertility cycle and inflict our will and desire upon reproduction in a more complicated way than most other species, as far as we could tell. I think that I mean, that's the premise of my whole online learning community, is called the Fruit of Knowledge Learning Community, FOK, fuck for an acronym. And it's all based on the idea of Lilith offering the fruit to Eve as a gift of liberation. Right? The snake is the goddess, is the divine creative force, and Lilith being the original partner of Adam. So yes, and I guess is probably my answer. And I would refer back to the beautiful, the Mysteries of the Dark Moon, if you haven't read it. And there's one of my absolute favorite tellings of the Lilith story, if you haven't heard it, is on the Old Prose podcast, the Oldest Profession podcast. There's a 3-part Lilith story that is absolutely wonderful. I highly recommend. So
thank you.
yeah, it's about her pleasure, right? Lilith gets on top. That's the story. So I think it's both abortion and menstruation. Even the choice to keep menstruating is seen as depriving men of production, of their production, of using our bodies as incubators. So I don't think it even has to be abortion. It can just be the choice to keep menstruating, which is what I have done for the last 21 years of practicing fertility awareness and having lots of orgasms and lots of periods without any babies, which that would be seen as sacrilegious and threatening to a lot of men in a lot of cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like we're touching on so many important aspects of the sacred dimensions of abortion here. But I think to kind of follow up on Annie's previous question, like, what is the most immediate need that we can fulfill now for women, because I feel like we all know that even though this is accessible to anyone on the internet, anybody in the world could access this conversation. Yet I
Sure.
think a lot of people won't even have the tools or the awareness that they could access it. So there's a certain level of privilege involved in what we're talking about right now,
Yeah.
or just having the conversation. So, maybe for the women or the people that I don't even know, that wouldn't even know to come and look for a conversation like this, what is it that we can do now to kind of help or be a part of the healing, or to educate or reach out? What is that?
Annie, do you want to? I feel like I've been talking a
Oh,
lot. I mean,
yeah. I mean, for one thing, I mean, how many women have had abortions? Like 1 in 3 or something?
yeah.
There's a movie by Jennifer Baumgartner called I Had an Abortion, where she interviews people who've had abortions, and I think there's way more need for that, for just us to really come forward and talk about it
Mhm.
and destigmatize it in that way.
Mhm.
And I also feel, well, I think the ritual is very, very important, because I have a friend who's a therapist. I have no idea if this is true. Andrea, I had no idea if you encountered something like this, but she said to me one time that the women that she sees who have the deepest angst have all had an abortion, that they have not processed the trauma.
Yeah.
Mm,
Wow. Okay, you're
Yeah.
both nodding.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, to do that healing, whatever we can do to help to do that healing, to make the resources available, to get the conversation going, to admit on the left that abortion can cause pain if you don't have
mm,
the right community and the right spiritual support. Because I think there's a real double bind here, because the only way that the left has been able to support abortion is to say, oh, it's just a surgical process, it's nothing, and so then those of us who did feel an emotional pain or whatever, we don't know how to share it, because then we'll be feeding into the hands of the anti-abortion people. So it's this terrible double bind, and the only way to get out of it is to be honest about our feelings, to support each other in the reality of our experience about abortion, and to begin to create this beautiful community. And it's just, I actually feel abortion is like the doorway to this incredible richness of spirituality. It might be the door into the goddess for so many women who are traumatized by abortion, and then discover. And that's, of course, why the right fears it, because I think they see it as not just a threat to capitalism, but also a threat to patriarchal religious control, which is, of course, the real control. That abortion. And if you look at Mary Condren's fantastic book, The Serpent and the Goddess, which is a history of patriarchy in Ireland, which basically how Ireland turned in 1,000 years from this matriarchal place where they worshiped the breasts of the goddess, and women had to have 15 men satisfy them. These great queens, they were celebrated for their sex drives. It was just total. And then within 1,000 years, it turned into patriarchal hell. And the first cutting edge, the leading tip of the spear, was abortion access. They took it away. That's how they started, and so that's how we can get it back, is through this. And I think we have to celebrate it and be proud about it, and be proud about the spiritual aspects of it, and not run away from the pain that we have under patriarchy with abortion. The fact that something hurts doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's
Hey.
not good for it.
yeah.
I think there's a twinning aspect to what you started out with, Annie, which I think is really re definitely so related to the idea of abortion or sacred abortion. And that is, the women who haven't fully come to terms with their abortion, but also the pain that's caused for women who are culturally forced into having children, right? Like
Oh,
if there's a woman who has a child, more than one child, what, and becomes pregnant and is like already overwhelmed, or decides, they would have preferred not to become pregnant, right? And then the whole traumatic, pressureful
Right.
situation of of having that woman go ahead and bring in a child that really they would have preferred not to have a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, whatever the number is, it doesn't matter. And so there's sort of that aspect of damned if you do and damned if you don't.
And the forced abortions of babies, like of girls, like in this book, there's 6 or 7 people write about the experience of being forced to have abortions because they were going to have a girl, and the patriarchy didn't want that. I mean, just the control at all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about it. I mean, that's if you have a safe space, if you have a even maybe safe relationship to talk about abortion, everybody needs to be talking about abortion more. I think that's the most foundational thing. We need to take it out from the outer space vortex of shame and bring it into the circle. And that's always been, I'm like, I never intended to have an abortion-centric practice or presence. It just was missing from midwifery and folk herbalism. It was just out there, and I want to bring it into the circle. So if you had an abortion, tell as many people as possible about your abortion story. If you haven't had an abortion, but you care about abortion, talk to as many people as possible about abortion. And in the physical reality, if you're listening to this and you have the capacity, you have the resources, and you feel safe to do so, order some medication from Plan C pills, get advanced provisions, keep it in your cabinet for a friend or a loved one when they need it. That's a very simple act that everyone can take if they choose to. And yeah, we got to talk about it.
That's right. Well, we have just a few more minutes here. I'm wondering if there's a specific goddess for this topic, or if it's just, or if you would suggest just women finding a goddess that they resonate with. For anybody who wants to answer.
You first, Sam.
Oh, I'm always a big fan of people digging into their own lineage, their own bloodline to find somebody, and that there's always somebody there. Bridget is said to be really great abortionist. She was supposed to remove pregnancies painlessly is one of the stories about Bridget. Obviously Lilith, who we've talked about quite a bit, Hel, Kali. Yeah. But yeah, look at your own lineage, and that goddess fab, also plenty of spirit, animal, less well-known archetypes, but definitely finding your guide and your totems from the spirit world, and that all your ancestors had abortions too. I like to remind folks that they've got beautiful support in their ancestry that can be called upon as well.
Thank you.
I think I started this whole journey when one of my parents got a postcard in the 1970s when I was a little kid with this picture of this pregnant man in a suit and tie, and it said if men could get pregnant, abortion would be a sacrament, which turns out it was said by a woman cab driver to Gloria Steinem and Faye Waddleston in a taxi cab during a feminist conference in Boston in the 70s. But anyway, there it was in the postcard, and I kept that postcard and I just kept thinking about it. If men could have pregnant, abortion would be a sacrament. What does that mean? It took me so long to figure it out, but it's true, and it is for us as well. It's a sacrament.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to give you this opportunity, both of you, Sam and Annie, to just give us any last words of wisdom or anything you want to leave the audience with that hasn't been said.
Stay curious. It's never too late to have an abortion ritual or process. The healing is quantum and infinite and available to you. And yeah, it's nature. It's part of nature. And getting out of your own unique story psyche into the animate all is going to be a beautiful and expansive support.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The goddesses embrace death and life equally. Abortion is about both of those things. It's incredibly sacred and beautiful. There's nothing to be ever ashamed, embarrassed about. It's an opportunity to have a very profound, beautiful experience, and it's also an opportunity to become a better mother, lover, person, whatever you want to be in the world. It truly is. It's just, it's part of our freedom.
Thank you.
Our
Thank
freedom
you.
is sacred.
Thank you, Annie. And thank you, Sam. Thank you both for being here. And as always, Andrea, thank you. But I truly, honestly learned a lot, and I have a lot to sit with as I leave this conversation. And to everybody at home, whether you're with us live or will be watching after the fact, thank you. You can learn more about Sam and Annie in the YouTube show notes. You can work with them, buy their books, et cetera there. And yeah, just thank everybody for being here. And I guess, the most important part, please like, please share, please leave a
Like,
comment.
share, subscribe.
That's right.
Goddess matters.
That's
Rocks.
right. The goddess does matter. So keep engaging with us, bring, potential new topics with us into the comments. Yeah, so everybody, thank you so much. And we will see everybody next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Sammy. Thank you, Annie.
Merry meet, merry part. Merry meet again.
Merry meet again. So
Thanks,
great to meet you
everyone.
finally, Sam, too.